What's going on, guys? So we have my dad's 2019 Thor Freedom Elite Class C, new to him, motorhome in the shop right now. It says the V10 engine in it. This is an ongoing project with all sorts of cool little upgrades. We've already made content on the tow bar, on the ready brake system, on the spare tire mount he's put on, as well as assembling and installing the rock tamer mud flaps that you can see right there in the back. Just in case rocks are flung up, they'll hit those and not the front of the tow vehicle, which is a 2021 Ford Escape plug-in hybrid. Now, big shout out to the channel sponsor, etrailer.com. They provided all of the equipment, everything, well, almost everything that's going in here. My father picked up a few things himself, including a really cool set of upfitting switches, which he installed right here. Actually, he has the whole assembly taken out right now because he's using those to power different things. What did you end up paying for the upfitter switches? He said he paid roughly $40 on Amazon for the switches, and we'll put a link in the description of this video if this is something that you might be interested in. Basically, it's a way to run a power lead to it. It's probably best that you run it through a relay that goes to the battery. That way you can trigger those switches to only work when the ignition is on, yet it's going to pull power from the main battery and not always be on with the battery when the vehicle's not on, if that makes sense. Similar to upfitter switches inside of a vehicle. Now, that said, the project that's kind of been an ongoing project is the camera system. Let's talk about that. Hang tight, I'll be right back. So the camera system that's being installed on here is the RVS camera system, again, from eTrailer. This is a professional commercial grade camera system. So whenever you see some camera systems on RVs, like the Furrion system that's often pre-wired in the back and prepped, a lot of the components are plastic. A lot of the components, I'm not going to say are cheap, but they're definitely built to more of a, what I would consider consumer grade versus industrial or commercial grade. The RVS camera system is beefy. That's probably the best way to describe it. The cameras themselves are in a cast housing. They are severely overbuilt. The camera in the back is also, I believe it's an aluminum cast housing around it with a sunshade above it. Very, very, very well built. The wiring harness alone is very professional grade. What was kind of cool is the fact that this Thor Freedom Elite already had a high center mount camera up at the very top integrated into the clearance light. And you can see it right up there. That camera had gone super fuzzy, and trying to find the replacement light up there was actually kind of difficult. So the RVS system provided a third camera, or a backup camera right there, and when we got into the wall on the back of the RV and pulled it down, we actually found out that there was an adapter that converted the cable coming from the display up front to work with that light up here, and that adapter, when removed, allowed the cable to directly plug into the RVS camera right there. And when we plugged it in, we were able to use the factory display, or it's an aftermarket display that Thor installed inside of this van, which is really nice. So the display instantly worked with the RVS camera in the back, and it cleared everything up. So now he has a really, really great means of being able to use it as a reverse camera as well as a driving camera looking out the back at his towed vehicle and whatever might be behind it. So that is really cool. But the RVS system came with a 7-inch display, which is right there. We mounted it to this portion of the dash. There's adhesive, and then we put 3 screws in, so it's not going anywhere. And it has the ability, of course, to connect to all of the cameras that were included as part of this package, the 2 side view cameras and the rear view. The way that my father's using this is to tie this into the turn signals, which is included as part of the harness. So whenever you turn on the right turn signal, the screen will switch to this right camera and give you a great view down the side of your blind spot. Now, of course, he does have tow mirrors on here, which have the spot mirrors, but whenever you are driving something like this and you're towing a vehicle behind you, you've added significant length. And this is going to give him a really great view all the way down the side. And if he wants to look down the side, he can either toggle through the camera options directly or simply turn on his right or left turn signal to trigger the camera and see everything going on down the side of the RV, especially during a lane change. So that's really cool. Now, this is not what I would consider to be an amateur install. This is something you have to have some installation experience to do. So where he mounted the camera on the box unit or the house of the actual RV, he could have mounted it up here. In some cases you see it up here, but he wanted to get around the box so he could see straight down the side. He mounted it at the lower portion right below this trim, which is actually an indicator of where the floor is. And underneath there, it's essentially hollow. So he was able to drop the wire, get it into the cab, run it along the bottom here, up into the monitor, and then tuck the wires behind the dash on both sides. Today what he's doing is installing the trigger wire from the turn signal. And that's the wire that goes into the harness to feed the brain up here a signal to let this camera know, or the other side camera know, when you're triggering the turn signal, so the camera turns on the corresponding side. So right now the way it works is his reverse camera and his driving back view camera comes from the 7-inch display that was included in the van when he got it, or in the Class C motorhome when he got it. So if he wants to look at his rear view camera, he can click camera on the screen, it'll turn on, or if he puts the van into reverse, that camera will turn on. The side cameras will trigger when he turns his turn signal on, or if he specifically selects a camera from the actual display that he mounted on top of the dash. And this is a really good way of doing it because he can technically have all 3 cameras available to him at any given time, but the one that he'll probably be watching the most is going to be the camera on the back, since it will look down towards the tow vehicle, and he'll be able to see the hitch setup as well as who's behind him, and if they're following too close, or if there's a scenario where he really needs to look out the back. If he wants to trigger these cameras while he's driving, all he has to do is bump on the turn signal for a few seconds. He can look down the side and he'll be able to see what's taking place on either side from the camera there. But it's a pretty cool install, Dad. So any major complications that you ran into during this install?
No, it's just as you'd expect on any vehicle. When you get up behind the dash, things get a little congested, and it's hard to find room for all the cables that have to stow back there. But there was a removable little panel that I took out, and I ended up modifying that panel to hold the 6-position gang switches, and that cleaned it up quite a bit. There wasn't any major issues. It's just time consuming and labor intensive, making sure all the wires are going to the right place.
Okay, so from a scale of 1 wrench to 5 wrenches, 1 wrench being a super simple install, I guess like a 1 wrench to me would be like when you put vent visors in, something like that, something that anybody can do following basic instructions and probably knock out in a very short period of time, up to a 5 wrench install, which for me would be a super complex install where you have to take a lot of components apart. Maybe you're going to do a big suspension upgrade, or you're going to do something that requires very intricate work within the main components of the vehicle. What would you say this is?
I'd probably have to give this one a 4, not so much because it's physically difficult. It's a matter of determining exactly how you want to run the wiring. I did employ a step relay so that it does only energize these the upfitter switches when the ignition is on, because I didn't want to take a chance on forgetting to turn the switches off and draining the battery.
Yep.
So that's working fine. You know, wiring the relay into the circuitry is where it gets a little bit tricky and demanding, and then the upfitter switches is pretty simple. The cable harness that came with the head-up display, not head-up, but the display, that's already pre-wired and labeled for the interrupters to come in from the turn signals that power the camera. And it's kind of ingenious because the way they did it, they made it function so that when you tap a turn signal or have your turn signal on, even though the light is blinking, the system itself retains power for about 30 seconds, so that the blinking of the light, you don't even see it. The camera still shows a steady picture. It doesn't blink with the turn signal light.
Oh, that is kind of cool. So again, it's basically just saying once that trigger wire is triggered, it starts a 30-second timer where the camera is going to stay on that corresponding side. Okay, so what's happening now is you see this wire coming out right here. This wire essentially is connected to the turn signal on the RV. The other wire on the other side is connected in the same way, and it's just draped over here just so it can test the signal to make sure that whenever you turn the turn signal on, wire power feeds through here, triggers the trigger for the display, and turns on the corresponding camera. So all we have to do at this point is get this wire connected, run it through the firewall, get it in place, do the same thing on the left side, and we'll be good to go. Okay, so we have just wrapped up with this install. Let's head inside of the van and see what it looks like. Both cameras are put on. It's super dark in here. All right. We can see there's power going to the screen now. He's got his TPMS over here. Close that door. Oh, don't need to. 11,170 miles on here. That's crazy. He originally thought it had like 25,000. If I turn on the right turn signal, and if I turn on the left turn signal, there you go. Check that out. That is really nice. So now it's completely automatic. It'll stay on for a little while if he wants. You can toggle through them like that if you want. Okay, so it turned off. So if we turn this on, we should have the ability to go to a menu here.
Summer vacation, maybe a road trip or two.
And we should be able to select camera, which is probably going to be, let's see here, rear camera. So now he has the rear camera and he has the side view cameras. And again, he can toggle through the cameras independently if he wants. That is really, really cool. That is a really great setup, and it's one that's definitely going to add some safety and convenience to his trip. And more importantly, you know, anytime you have visibility around the side of your RV, it just avoids you stressing out about certain conditions. And one thing I've always said about driving an RV, towing a trailer in general, anytime you can reduce the stress, the anxiety, the white knuckling on a trip, it means that you're going to have a much more pleasant time. You're going to arrive where you're trying to go more relaxed, and you're going to enjoy the trip versus just enjoying the destination. Anyways, guys, I sure hope you enjoyed this video. We will put a link to this in the description of the video if this is something you're interested in installing on your RV. And again, this is something that most folks should be able to do if they have some technical experience installing equipment. If you don't, this could be challenging, and you may want to take the whole kit to a professional install shop who should have no problem at all installing it. But again, keep in mind that there is some routing that needs to be done. There is some wiring. There, I got a light turned on now. You can also see he wired the upfitter switches right here. So this is a really, really cool install, and when you spend the time to do it correctly and make it look really nice, it can add a lot of capability. So now he has 6 upfitter switches to be able to add things like lighting or any other accessory that might require some power. And one thing to keep in mind, you can now actually get products sent to an installer near you from eTrailer. So whenever you're buying things on eTrailer and you're kind of worried about installing it yourself, they now have recommended installers that you can search for locally and perhaps find a place that can put the equipment on whenever you buy it from eTrailer. And again, big shout out to the folks over at eTrailer for providing all of this equipment for evaluation, review, and installation on my dad's new RV. Guys, if you haven't had a chance, please take a moment, subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up, and we'll talk to you again very soon.